The sky above Velara burned with colors that should not exist. Ambassador Sela watched from the shelter entrance as another defense satellite exploded in orbit, painting the atmosphere in shades of green and violet. She had seen 12 such deaths in the past hour alone. Soon, there would be nothing left between her people and extinction. Ambassador, the children are asking questions again, said researcher Tivos, his voice tired beyond measure. He was old, even for a Cathari, his fur gone silver with age and worry. What should I tell them? Sela looked past him into the underground shelter, where 300 young ones huddled together. Their large eyes reflected the emergency lights, full of confusion and fear. They did not understand why the sky was falling. They did not understand why their parents had said goodbye with tears streaming down their faces. Tell them the truth, Sela said quietly. We have always valued truth above comfort. The first Crethon ships had appeared 3 days ago. They came in swarms, thousands upon thousands of dark vessels that blocked out the stars. The Cathari had tried to communicate, to negotiate, to understand what they wanted. The Crethon answered only with weapons fire. Within 6 hours, every orbital platform was destroyed. Within 12, the planetary shield generators were rubble. Within 24, the Crethon began landing troops. The Cathari were not warriors. Their civilization had been built on trade, art, and philosophy. They had spent 5,000 years perfecting the craft of pottery, another 3,000 developing new forms of music. War was something they studied in history books, a dark chapter from their primitive past. They had no armies, no weapons of significance, no knowledge of how to fight. They had only their dignity. And even that was slipping away. Sela walked through the shelter, stopping to speak with small groups of children. A young cub named Mira grabbed her hand with tiny paws. My mama said someone would come help us. Is that true? The question hit Sela like a physical blow. She knelt down to meet Mira's eyes. We sent messages to every civilization we know. We asked for help. Too. And they are coming? Mira's voice held such hope that Sela wanted to weep. I do not know, little one. They are very far away. What Sela did not say was that she had been in the council chamber when the responses came. The Vexel Federation regretted that they could not intervene in conflicts outside their borders. The Draxan Empire noted that Cathari space was 30 light-years distant, and any rescue fleet would take months to arrive. The Galactic Council itself had been sympathetic, but firm. They had treaties, protocols, rules about intervention in sovereign conflicts. No one was coming. The galaxy had done its calculations and found the Cathari wanting in strategic value. An explosion shook the shelter, raining dust from the ceiling. The children screamed. Sela held Mira close and tried to project a calm she did not feel. Above them, her world was dying by degrees. Ambassador, the council requests your presence, a messenger said, appearing at her elbow. They are making the final broadcast. Sela's heart sank. Final broadcast. The words carried the weight of extinction. She squeezed Mira's paw once more and followed the messenger to the communication chamber deeper in the shelter complex. Elder Tivos stood before the broadcasting equipment, his face composed despite the trembling in his hands. Around him, the remaining council members had gathered, perhaps 20 in total. Once there had been hundreds. The Crethon had been efficient in their targeting. Are we ready? Tivos asked the technician. Yes, Elder. The signal will reach all known civilizations. We are using every remaining power cell to boost the transmission. Tivos nodded and stepped before the camera. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 5,000 years of civilization facing its end. To all who receive this message, I am Elder Tivos of the Cathari people. 3 days ago, the Crethon swarm entered our system without warning or provocation. We attempted peace. We offered negotiation. We were answered with violence. Our defenses, such as they were, have fallen. Our people are dying. We send this final message not to beg for salvation that will not come in time, but to ensure our story survives us. He paused, gathering himself. We made mistakes. We believed that civilization meant setting aside the capacity for violence. We thought our art, our culture, our philosophy would be shield enough. We were wrong. Let our fate be a lesson to others. Peace is precious, but the ability to defend that peace is equally vital. Passed together. Around the room, council members wept silently. Sela felt tears on her own face. To the Galactic Council, to our trading partners, to any who remember us, we do not blame you for our fate. The galaxy is vast, and you have your own people to protect. We accept our end with the dignity that defined our beginning. Tell our children's children that we existed. Tell them we tried to be good. Tell them we loved beauty and kindness and truth. Tyvo stepped back from the camera. The technician ended the transmission. In the silence that followed, no one spoke. What was there to say? Sela returned to the children's chamber. Mira ran to her immediately. Did help come? Not yet, little one. But they will come, right? Someone will come? Sela opened her mouth to offer gentle truth. But an alarm cut through the air. Every adult in the shelter froze. That particular sound meant only one thing: new contacts detected at the system's edge. A technician burst into the chamber, his face pale. Ambassador, sensors detect massive FTL signatures, multiple large vessels emerging from hyperspace at the outer system boundary. Sela's heart stopped. The Crethon were bringing reinforcements. How many ships? She asked, her voice surprisingly steady. 47 vessels, Ambassador. But... The technician hesitated, confusion crossing his features. But the energy signatures are wrong. These are not Crethon designs. The computer cannot identify the configuration. Then who? Tivos demanded, arriving behind them. Unknown, Elder. The vessels are transmitting in basic trade language, but the dialect is strange. Primitive grammar. They are requesting communication on all frequencies. Sela and Tivos exchanged glances. Hope was dangerous. Hope could make the fall even harder. But what else did they have? Open a channel, Sela ordered. Static filled the speakers, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking in heavily accented but understandable trade language. The speaker sounded young, confident, and utterly unafraid. Attention Kethari vessels and ground stations. This is Admiral Kim J-1 of the Human 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call 72 hours ago. We came as fast as our ships could travel. We are here to help. Please respond if you can hear this transmission. The shelter fell into absolute silence. Humans. The newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel. Barely 50 years out from their homeworld. Primitive, by galactic standards. Unknown. Unpredictable. Impossible. They were 30 light-years away. No one could cross that distance in 72 hours. No one would even try for a species they barely knew. Mira tugged on Sela's hand. Is that someone coming to help? Sela stared at the communication equipment, unable to process what she had heard. Above Velara, the sky still burned. The Crethon still descended. Her people still died. But somewhere at the edge of their system, 47 impossible ships had just arrived. And suddenly, for the first time in 3 days, Ambassador Sela allowed herself to hope. Admiral Kim J-1 stood on the bridge of the carrier Indomitable and studied the tactical display with the calm expression that had earned him command of humanity's 3rd Fleet. Before him, the holographic projection showed a system in chaos. 43 Crethon vessels orbited the planet called Velara. Hundreds more swarmed in the atmosphere. The orbital debris field suggested a slaughter. Status report, Captain Park, Kim said quietly. Captain Park Minji looked up from her station, her young face tight with controlled anger. She had reviewed the recordings of the Kethari distress call during their 3-day sprint across 30 light-years. She had watched the footage of Crethon troops burning Kethari cities. Like everyone in the fleet, she wanted blood. All ships report ready for combat, Admiral. Weapons charged. Strike craft prepared for launch. The fleet is awaiting your orders. Park paused, then added, The Kethari have responded to our hail. They sound confused, sir. Kim almost smiled. Confused was understandable. According to Galactic Council records, humanity was supposed to be too new, too primitive, too far away to matter. The Council had made that very clear 72 hours ago, when Earth Command requested permission to intervene. The memory of that conversation still burned in Kim's mind. Admiral Kim, this is not humanity's concern, the Vexel representative had said. The Kethari situation is tragic, but you lack the resources, the experience, and frankly the authority to intervene in conflicts beyond your borders. We strongly advise you to remain in your designated space. Kim had been on Earth when that transmission arrived, preparing for a routine patrol mission. He watched the feed from the Kethari homeworld, watched the desperate faces of the doomed, and made a decision that bypassed every protocol in the book. Counselor, Kim had replied, with respect, we decline your advice. Those people asked for help. We're going to provide it. Earth Command out. He had cut the transmission before the Vexel could respond. Within 6 hours, every available warship humanity possessed had begun converging on rally points. The Third Fleet departed first, the fastest and most heavily armed. The others would follow as soon as they could break orbit. Earth's entire military, committed to saving one species of aliens they had never even met. Sir, the Kethari ambassador is on the line, Commander Lee Sung-ho reported from the communications station. Put her through. The view screen shimmered and resolved into the image of a slender, furred alien with large eyes that reminded Kim of Earth's lemurs. She looked exhausted and terrified, but her voice remained steady. Admiral Kim, I am Ambassador Sela of the Kethari Council. I must confess, we do not understand. You are 30 light-years distant. The Galactic Council said, intervention was impossible. Why are you here? Kim considered his answer carefully. Humans had learned that other species found their motivations baffling, even frightening. The galaxy operated on calculations of profit, risk, and strategic advantage. Humanity operated on something else. Ambassador Sela, we received your distress call. We came to help. It's that simple, but your people barely know us. We have minimal trade relations. We offer you no strategic value. The Crethon are dangerous. You risk your lives for strangers. Yes, Kim said simply. Sela stared at him through the screen, her expression unreadable. I do not understand your species, Admiral Kim. Few do, Ambassador. But you can understand this. We're here. We're armed. And we're going to make the Crethon regret ever hearing the name Kethari. Now, I need you to evacuate your people from the Northern Hemisphere. Things are about to get very loud. He cut the transmission and turned to his bridge crew. Every eye was on him. These were Earth's finest volunteers, all. Many barely into their 20s. They had grown up on stories of humanity's bloody history, of world wars and genocides, and the desperate struggle to become better than their worst impulses. They wore that history like armor now. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Commence Operation Righteous Fury. Show the Crethon what happens when they threaten the innocent. The Indomitable shuddered as its massive engines pushed the carrier toward combat speed. Around it, 46 other vessels accelerated in perfect formation. Destroyers, frigates, cruisers, and the carrier itself, every ship Earth could spare. Crethon vessels are detecting our approach, Park reported. They're forming up. Looks like they're sending about 300 attack craft to intercept. Commander Lee whistled softly. 300 against 47. They think they have us outnumbered. They're about to learn something the hard way, Kim said. They've been fighting pacifists for 3 days. Now they face Deathworlders. Execute attack pattern. Delta 7. The human fleet split into 4 groups, each angling at different vectors toward the incoming Crethon swarm. To an observer, it would look like panic, like the humans were breaking formation. The Crethon clearly thought so. Their attack craft accelerated, eager to catch the dispersing prey. They had no idea they were flying into a trap. "Contact in 90 seconds, Park announced. "All weapons free. Steady," Kim murmured. "Let them commit." The Crethon craft were sleek, organic-looking things that moved in perfect unison like schools of fish. They had been bred for war. Their tactics refined over centuries of conquest. They swept toward the human ships with absolute confidence. 60 seconds. Hold. 30 seconds. They're locking weapons. "Now," Kim said calmly. "Spring it." The four human groups suddenly reversed course, their engines screaming as they executed impossible high-G turns. Before the Crethon could react, the groups had reformed into a hollow sphere with the enemy swarm at its center. Every human weapon opened fire simultaneously. The tactical display turned into a light show of destruction. Human missiles, designed for hunting other humans in Earth's brutal naval wars, tore through Crethon hulls like tissue paper. Point defense lasers created a web of death that nothing could escape. Railgun rounds, accelerated to terrifying velocities, punched through multiple targets with each shot. In 90 seconds of absolute carnage, 240 Crethon craft simply ceased to exist. The survivors broke and ran. They had never encountered resistance like this. Every species they had faced before either fled or died. These humans pursued with a fury that transcended reason. "Destroy them all," Kim ordered. "Send a message." The human ships gave chase, hunting down every fleeing Crethon vessel with mechanical efficiency. On the view screen, Kim watched as Captain Choi Hejin's destroyer, Soul's Pride, caught 3 enemy craft trying to escape toward the outer system. The destroyer's forward batteries fired in sequence. 3 bright flashes, 3 expanding debris clouds. "Admiral, receiving transmission from Crethon command ship," Lee said, surprise in his voice. "They're requesting negotiation." Denied. They had their chance to negotiate before they murdered civilians. "Tell them, if they want to survive, they can leave this system immediately. They have 5 minutes to start burning for the edge." "Sir, what if they don't leave?" Kim's expression hardened. "Then, we introduce them to a human tradition. We call it total war." Total war. On Valara's surface, Ambassador Sela stood at the shelter entrance with Elder Tivos, and 300 children pressed against the windows behind her. They watched the sky as the battle raged in orbit above. Every few seconds, another bright flash marked a Crethon death. "They fight with such violence," Tivos whispered, shocked. "They fight to protect us," Sela said quietly. She thought of Admiral Kim's young face, his matter-of-fact tone, when he said, "That's what humans do." What kind of species crossed 30 light-years to die for strangers? Mira tugged on her hand. "Are the humans winning?" Sela watched another cluster of Crethon vessels explode under human fire. "Yes, little one. I believe they are." "Why are they so good at fighting?" It was Elder Tivos who answered, his voice heavy with new understanding. "Because they come from a world that taught them how. We built our civilization in peace and plenty. The humans built theirs in fire and blood. They learned to be warriors because they had no choice. And now they use those skills to save us," Sela added. "Instead of conquering, they protect." In orbit, Admiral Kim watched as the Crethon command ship began moving toward the system's edge. Dozens of other enemy vessels followed. They were retreating, abandoning their invasion. Humanity's third fleet had been in system less than 2 hours, and already the tide had turned. "All ships, maintain pursuit pressure, but do not follow beyond the heliopause," Kim ordered. "Our job is to protect Valara, not chase vengeance across the galaxy." "Receiving communication from the remaining Crethon forces on the planet," Lee reported. "They're requesting terms of surrender." Kim allowed himself a small smile. "Tell them to lay down their weapons and present themselves to the Cathari authorities for judgment. We're just the exterminators. The Cathari will decide their fate." He turned to Park. Get me. Ambassador Sela again. Get me. When Sela's face appeared on the screen, Kim could see tears streaming down her face. Behind her, the sound of cheering children filled the audio feed. Ambassador, the orbital space is secure. We're coordinating with your remaining defense forces to handle the ground situation. Your people are safe. Admiral Kim, Sela said, her voice breaking. How can we ever repay this debt? No debt, Ambassador. Just maybe remember that someone came when you called. Pass that lesson forward someday. As the connection closed, Kim looked at his crew. They were battered, tired, and already preparing for the ground assault to liberate Cathari cities. But every face wore the same expression: grim satisfaction at a job begun. Sir, Park said quietly, the Galactic Council is demanding we explain our actions. Let them demand, Kim replied. We came, we fought, we won. That's all the explanation they need. Sergeant Choi Hee-jin felt the drop pod shake as it punched through Valara's atmosphere at terminal velocity. Around her, 23 Marines in powered armor checked their weapons one final time. They had trained for this moment their entire careers, not fighting for Earth, but fighting for others who could not fight for themselves. 30 seconds to impact, the pod's computer announced in a calm voice. Choi activated her helmet display and studied the tactical overlay. The landing zone was a Cathari city called Marava. Population 200,000. Half the city was on fire. Crethon ground troops controlled the northern districts and were advancing toward a civilian shelter complex that held 15,000 refugees, mostly children and elderly. The Crethon would reach the shelters in 40 minutes. Choi's unit had 35 minutes to stop them. Listen up, she said over the squad channel. We're outnumbered about 50 to 1. The enemy has fortified positions and local superiority. We are going to run straight at them anyway. Because that's what Marines do. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. And remember that somewhere up there, Admiral Kim is watching us make humanity proud. Oorah! The squad shouted in unison. The pod hit the ground hard enough to rattle teeth. The doors blew open, and Choi's Marines poured out into a war zone. Immediately, Crethon weapons fire lit up their position. The aliens had been waiting. Suppressing fire, second squad. First squad with me, Choi barked, her rifle already tracking targets. The powered armor's targeting computer highlighted 37 enemy positions in the buildings ahead. She sent the data to her shoulder-mounted micromissiles and fired. 4 missiles streaked away, each splitting into 6 submunitions. 24 explosions tore through Crethon positions simultaneously. The Marines advanced under the cover of the blasts, moving with practiced efficiency through the burning streets. Choi had fought in simulation 1,000 times. But this was different. Real buildings burning, real civilians screaming in the distance, real enemies trying to kill her squad, and she had never felt more alive. Contact left! Private Kim Sun-woo shouted. A group of Crethon soldiers appeared from a side street, their organic weapons spitting acid rounds. Kim's armor took 3 hits, the outer layer sizzling and melting. He did not slow down. Instead, he charged directly at them, his rifle firing in short, controlled bursts. 5 Crethon dropped. The rest retreated. End. Armor at 60%, Sergeant, Kim reported calmly. Noted. Keep moving. They reached the main street leading to the shelter complex. The tactical overlay showed 200 Crethon troops dug in between them and the civilians. It was a killing field, deliberately designed. Any force trying to reach the shelters would be caught in crossfire from multiple directions. Well, Choi muttered, they did not account for humans being crazy. She switched to the general combat channel. All units, this is Sergeant Choi. We're going straight up the middle. Ignore suppression fire. Ignore tactics. Just run fast, shoot straight. And do not stop until we reach those civilians. Humanity is watching. Make them proud. Execute. 24 Marines broke cover and sprinted directly into the Crethon kill zone. Weapons fire erupted from every direction. The noise was deafening. Private Lee's armor took a direct hit and went offline. Corporal Park dragged him behind cover, while still firing one-handed. Specialist Jung's shields failed completely. But she kept running, her rifle never stopping. The Crethon could not understand what they were seeing. Every species they had conquered would retreat under such fire. These humans did not even slow down. They advanced through the kill zone like machines, like nightmares, like something from a death world that did not know the meaning of fear. Because that was exactly what they were. Choi reached the first Crethon position and did not bother with her rifle. She simply crashed into the barricade at full speed, her armor's enhanced strength turning her into a living battering ram. 3 Crethon flew backward from the impact. Her squad poured through the gap behind her, clearing the position with brutal efficiency. Second line breached, she reported. Civilian shelter in sight. We're going to make it. Above the city, in the Indomitable's Combat Information Center, Admiral Kim watched the tactical feeds from Choi's helmet camera. Commander Lee stood beside him, his face pale. Sir, Sergeant Choi's unit has taken 70% casualties. She's requesting additional support. Denied, Kim said quietly. Every other unit is engaged. She'll have to finish this herself. Admiral, there are 24 Marines against 200 Crethon. The numbers do not matter, Commander. Watch. On the screen, Choi's remaining 12 Marines had formed a defensive line between the Crethon and the shelter entrance. Behind them, Cathari civilians were being evacuated through the underground tunnels. The Marines stood their ground against impossible odds, their weapons never stopping, never faltering. One by one, the Marines fell. Armor breached. Shields failed. Bodies that were only human beneath all the technology took damage they could not recover from. But even as they fell, they kept firing. Private Kim went down with both legs shattered, propped himself against a wall, and continued shooting until his ammunition ran out. Corporal Park's armor completely failed, so she drew her sidearm and kept fighting with nothing but polymer plating between her and enemy fire. They're going to die, Lee whispered. Yes, Kim agreed. But the civilians will live. That's the trade they're making. In the shelter, Ambassador Sela watched the human Marines through the security cameras. She stood with Elder Tivos and young Mira, all of them transfixed by the display of sacrifice unfolding above their heads. The Marines were dying. One by one, the brave humans who had come to save strangers were giving their lives to buy time for the evacuation. Why? Mira asked, tears streaming down her face. Why are they doing this? Sela knelt beside the young cub, struggling to find words. Because they believe we are worth saving, even if it costs them everything. Sela knelt cub. The town time. Not now, V. But we're not their people. We're not even the same species. I know, little one. But humans see things differently than the rest of the galaxy. They don't calculate worth in trade value or strategic importance. They calculate worth in whether someone needs help. On the screen, Sergeant Choi was the last Marine standing. Her armor was shredded. Her left arm hung useless, and her shields had failed 20 seconds ago. She stood alone in the street facing 60 remaining Crethon soldiers. Behind her, the last group of civilians disappeared into the tunnels. Evacuation complete, a Cathari voice reported over the shelter's speakers. All civilians are safe. Choi heard it too. She allowed herself a small smile inside her cracked helmet. Mission accomplished. Her squad had saved 15,000 lives. It was a good trade. All right, you ugly bastards, she said to the Crethon, knowing they could not understand her. Let's finish this. She raised her rifle one last time. The Crethon raised theirs. The shelter fell silent, waiting for the inevitable. Then the sky above the city screamed with the sound of human fighters making atmospheric entry. 6 attack craft dropped through the clouds like avenging angels, their weapons already firing. The street where Choi stood erupted in explosions as the fighters tore through the Crethon positions. "Sergeant Choi. This is Flight Leader Nam. Sorry we're late. Had to clear orbital space first. You all right down there?" Choi laughed, the sound slightly hysterical with relief and exhaustion. "I am now. Flight Leader. Thanks for the save." No thanks needed, Sergeant. Humans don't abandon each other. Now get yourself to medical before you bleed out." As Choi limped toward the shelter entrance, Kethery emerged from the tunnels. They stared at her in awe and horror at the battered armor, the blood, the evidence of wounds that should have killed her. Sela approached slowly, Mira holding her hand. "Sergeant Choi," Sela said softly. "Your squad, they sacrificed themselves for us. That's what Marines do, ma'am. We stand between the innocent and danger. Doesn't matter what species. Doesn't matter the cost. I do not understand humans," Sela admitted. "Your capacity for violence is terrifying. But the way you use that violence, you fight only to protect. You could conquer the galaxy with such power, but instead you save strangers." Choi knelt down to Mira's level, her armor servos whining. "Little one, can I tell you a secret? Humans are scary. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. We know war better than anyone in the galaxy." Mira nodded, eyes wide. "But we learned something from all that fighting. We learned that the strongest thing is not how hard you can hit. The strongest thing is knowing when to fight and what to fight for. We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. That's what makes us human." Above them, the sound of combat faded. The Crethon were retreating from the city, fleeing toward their landing sites, only to find human ships waiting. Across Velara, the same scene repeated in dozens of cities. Human Marines landing, human fighters providing air support, human medics treating Cathari, wounded alongside their own. In the Indomitable, Admiral Kim received reports from all ground units. The Crethon invasion was collapsing. They had expected easy prey and found predators instead. Within hours, every Crethon soldier on Velara would be captured or dead. "Admiral," Commander Lee said, "initial casualty reports are coming in. We've lost 4,000 Marines. Another 6,000 wounded." Kim closed his eyes briefly. 4,000 families would receive news that their loved ones died on a world most humans could not pronounce, saving aliens they had never met. "Make sure their names are recorded," Kim said quietly. "Every single one. The Kethery should know who saved them." "Yes, sir." On Velara's surface, as the sun set over Marava, Sela stood with Sergeant Choi and watched the human ships patrolling the skies. Mira had fallen asleep, holding Choi's hand, exhausted by fear and relief. "Your species frightens me, Sergeant," Sela admitted. "But I think the galaxy needs more things like you. Things that frighten the monsters in the dark." Choi smiled wearily. "We're not that special, Ambassador. We're just humans doing what humans do." Someone cried for help. We answered. It's really that simple. Somewhere in orbit, Admiral Kim would have agreed. The warning came at 0347 hours, ship time. "Admiral." Massive FTL signatures detected at system edge. Captain Park's voice cut through the bridge's relative quiet. "Crethon. Reinforcements arriving." "Sir, it's the entire swarm." Admiral Kim Jae-won felt his stomach drop as the tactical display updated. The numbers kept climbing. 500 contacts. 800. 1,000. 1,500. 2,000, and still counting. "Final count, Captain," he said, his voice steady despite the ice forming in his chest. 2,147 vessels, Admiral. Every ship configuration the Crethon possess. This isn't a battle group. This is their entire military force. Commander Lee turned from his station, face pale. "Sir, we're outnumbered, 43-1. Kim studied the display in silence. His third fleet had 47 ships. They had already lost 4 in the initial engagement. 43 vessels, against over 2,000. The mathematics were brutal and simple. Humanity would lose. But that had never stopped humans before. "Get me Earth Command," Kim ordered. The communication took 30 seconds to establish. The lag between Valara and Earth, causing frustrating delays. Fleet Admiral Choi appeared on the screen, her expression grave. She had clearly seen the same sensor data. "Admiral Kim, new orders are being transmitted. You are to withdraw immediately. The Third Fleet cannot hold against those numbers. Preserve your forces, for, respectfully, Admiral Choi." "I'm declining those orders," Kim interrupted. Silence on the channel. Then, quietly, "J1. There are 2 million Cathari on that planet. There are 15,000 humans in your fleet. You cannot save them. The mathematics do not work." "The mathematics never work for humans, Admiral. We went to the moon when the math said it was impossible. We cured diseases the math said were incurable. We survived an ice age, 2 world wars, and our own worst impulses. Mathematics is just another problem to solve." "And how do you solve this one?" Kim looked at his bridge crew. They were all watching him. These young humans who had volunteered to die for strangers. Captain Park, only 28 years old. Commander Lee, who had left his family behind on Earth 3 months ago. Weapons Officer Nam, who wrote poetry in her spare time. They knew the odds. They did not care. "We hold the line," Kim said simply. "We give the Cathari time to evacuate underground. We make the Crethon pay for every meter of space. And we show the galaxy what humans stand for." Admiral Choi was quiet for a long moment. "J1, you're going to die. Probably. But the Cathari will live. That's a trade worth making." Another pause. Then Choi straightened in her chair, tears visible in her eyes. "Then make it count. Admiral. Show them who we are. Earth. Command out." The screen went dark. Kim turned to his crew. "All hands, this is Admiral Kim. By now you've seen the sensor data. You know what's coming. I won't lie to you, our odds of survival are minimal. Earth Command has ordered us to withdraw. I'm giving you a choice. We can leave right now and preserve our fleet. Or we can stay and give 2 million Cathari civilians a chance to survive. This is not an order. This is a request. Show of hands who stays." Every hand on the bridge went up. Throughout the ship, throughout the entire fleet, the response was the same. Not a single human chose to leave. "Then we follow Protocol Thermopylae," Kim said. "All ships form defensive sphere around Valara. We don't retreat. We don't surrender. We hold until relief arrives, or we're dead. Either way, we make sure the Cathari remember us." The Third Fleet moved into position, 43 ships against an ocean of enemies. On Valara, emergency sirens wailed as the remaining population fled to the deepest shelters. Ambassador Sela coordinated the evacuation, her voice calm despite the terror in her hearts. "All citizens must reach shelter within 30 minutes. She broadcast across all frequencies. "This is not a drill. 30 minutes. Until the battle begins." Oh. Beside her, Sergeant Choi Hee-jin stood in borrowed civilian clothes, her body wrapped in bandages. She had refused medical evacuation to orbit, insisting on helping the ground evacuation. "You should be on your ship, Sergeant," Sela said quietly. "My ship is going to be dead in a few hours," Choi replied. "Rather spend my last moments helping people than sitting in a metal coffin waiting for the end." "Do you really believe your fleet can hold?" "No. But believing was never the point. The point is we try anyway." The Crethon fleet approached in a formation that blotted out the stars. They had learned from their earlier defeats. This time, they came with overwhelming force, absolute superiority, and the certain knowledge of victory. They had not learned about human stubbornness. "Incoming transmission from Crethon Command," Lee reported. They're offering terms. No, Lee reported. Put it through, Kim said. The view screen showed a Krathon war leader, its chitinous face unreadable. When it spoke, the translator made its voice sound cold and mechanical. Human fleet. You are outnumbered and outmatched. Withdraw now, and we will allow you to leave. Remain, and you will be destroyed. You cannot save these prey creatures. Accept reality. Kim stood and faced the screen directly. Krathon war leader. Let me explain something about humans. We don't accept reality. We change it. You want this planet? You'll have to go through us. Every single ship. Every single human. We will make you pay in blood for every meter. That's our reality. That's our answer. Come and take it. He cut the transmission. All weapons free, Kim ordered. Engage at will. The Krathon swarm descended like a tidal wave. The human defensive sphere opened fire with every weapon, creating a wall of death around Valara. Missiles streaked through space. Lasers carved paths through enemy formations. Railguns hurled projectiles at relativistic speeds. For precious minutes, the sphere held. Then the sheer weight of numbers began to tell. A human destroyer took concentrated fire from 30 Krathon vessels and exploded. A frigate's shields failed under sustained bombardment. One by one, the defensive positions weakened. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, Park reported, her voice tight. Engineering reports. Reactor containment at 60%. We can't take much more of this, Admiral. We don't need to take much more, Kim replied. We just need to buy time. On the planet's surface, the evacuation continued under fire. Krathon landing craft began dropping through the atmosphere, trying to reach the shelters before everyone could hide. Human fighters intercepted them, sacrificing themselves in kamikaze runs when their ammunition ran out. Sela watched from the shelter entrance as a human pilot deliberately rammed her damaged fighter into a Krathon dropship. Both craft exploded in a fireball that lit up the sky. 15 seconds later, another human fighter did the same thing. They're killing themselves to buy us time, Elder Tyvos whispered in horror. They're saving us, Sela corrected. At any cost. Necessary. In orbit. The battle reached its crescendo. The Indomitable was burning. Half her weapons offline. Her hull breached in a dozen places. Around her, the remainder of the Third Fleet fought with desperate ferocity. When weapons failed, captains rammed their ships into Krathon vessels. When ships died, the escape pods continued broadcasting tactical data to help the survivors. Admiral, the Soul's Pride is requesting permission to execute final strike, Lee reported, his voice breaking. Captain Park closed her eyes. The Soul's Pride was her sister ship, commanded by her academy classmate. Granted, Kim said quietly. On the tactical display, the destroyer Soul's Pride broke from formation, her engines burning at maximum. She had taken too much damage to continue fighting effectively, but she could still move. The ship accelerated directly toward a Krathon carrier surrounded by 50 escorts. This is Captain Jung of the Soul's Pride. A voice came over the fleet channel. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who needs protecting, the destroyer hit the carrier at maximum velocity. The explosion consumed both vessels and 27 escorts. 70 ships destroyed in one sacrificial strike. The Krathon advance faltered, just for a moment. They had never seen anything like this madness, this willingness to die for others. On Valara, Sela made a decision. She turned to the shelter's communication center and activated the planetary broadcast. Attention all Cathari, she said, her voice ringing across every frequency. I know you are afraid. I know we are not warriors. But humanity came 30 light-years to die for us. Can we do less for ourselves? She paused, gathering her courage. Every civilian ship still capable of flight, report to designated rally points. We may not have weapons, but we have ships. We can ram like the humans do. We can make the Crethon pay for our world. Who will stand with humanity? Who will show the galaxy that Cathari can be brave? For a long moment, silence. Then, across Valara, civilian vessels began lifting off. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, ancient mining ships pulled from museums. They had no weapons, no shields, no chance of survival. They flew anyway. Ambassador, what have you done? Tyvos asked in shock. What humans taught me, Sela replied. Sometimes courage matters more than calculation. 300 Cathari civilian ships rose to join the battle. They flew in clumsy formations, unpracticed and terrified. But they flew into the Crethon fleet and began ramming attacks. Following the human example, each Cathari ship destroyed 1 or 2 Crethon vessels before dying. On the Indomitable, Admiral Kim watched in amazement as the tactical display updated. Sir, the Cathari are joining the fight, Lee said. Wonder in his voice. They're copying our tactics. Kim felt something break inside his chest. Some hard knot of resignation. These peaceful people, who had never fought before, were sacrificing themselves because humans had shown them it was possible. All ships, cover the Cathari vessels, Kim ordered. They're fighting for their world. We make sure their sacrifice counts. The combined human-Cathari resistance created chaos in the Crethon fleet. The swarm had never faced suicidal attacks from multiple directions. Their formations broke. Their coordination failed. And then, at the moment of deepest desperation, the sensors detected new FTL signatures, massive ones. Dozens of them. Coming from the direction of Earth. Admiral, Park said, her voice trembling with emotion. It's the rest of our fleet. Kim stared at the display as humanity's 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th fleets emerged from FTL. 110 pristine warships, fully armed and ready for battle. Earth had sent everything. Every last ship, every last sailor, every last weapon, all Crethon vessels. Kim broadcast on all frequencies. You wanted to know what humans will do to protect the innocent? Now you know. We came. We fought. We died. And we brought reinforcements. Leave now, or face the full might of humanity. The Crethon swarm, for the first time in their history, retreated. The battle lasted 6 more hours, but the outcome was never in doubt once the reinforcements arrived. The Crethon swarm, faced with humanity's combined might and the unexpected resistance of the Cathari civilians, broke completely. Some ships fled into deep space. Others surrendered. The war leader's vessel was captured intact, its crew taken prisoner for the first time in Crethon history. By dawn on Valara, the sky was clear of enemies. Only human ships remained in orbit, their hulls scarred and burning but victorious. Admiral Kim Jae-won stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the sunrise over the alien world he had saved. The carrier was a wreck, barely holding together, but she had survived. 43 ships had held the line. 23 ships remained functional. 20 vessels and their entire crews were simply gone, turned to debris and memories. 4,000 Marines dead on the ground. Another 6,000 wounded. 3,000 Navy personnel killed in space. 13,000 humans had paid the ultimate price, but 2 million Cathari lived. In the cold mathematics of war, it was an acceptable trade. In the warm reality of human hearts, every single loss hurt like a wound that would never fully heal. Admiral, the Cathari government is requesting permission to come aboard, Commander Lee reported. His voice was hoarse from shouting orders during the battle. They want to hold a ceremony. And, permission granted. And Lee? Sir, well done. Your parents would be proud. Lee's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Thank you, Admiral. So would yours. 3 hours later, the Indomitable's main hangar had been converted into a memorial hall. The human dead were honored with their names projected on the walls, 4,000 on one side, 9,000 on the other. Every Cathari who had died in the civilian ship attacks was listed as well, 312 names that would stand forever alongside the humans who inspired them. Ambassador Sela stood before the assembled crowd with Elder Tivos beside her. Human sailors in dress uniforms formed ranks on one side. Cathari civilians, still shocked by their survival, filled the other. Between them, young Mira held the hand of Sergeant Choi Hae-jin, who stood on crutches but refused to sit. Sela began to speak, her voice carrying through the vast space. 3 days ago, we sent a message into the void. We asked for help, knowing that no help would come. We accepted our death as an inevitable consequence of our choices. We had built a civilization of peace, of art, of philosophy. She paused, looking at the human names on the walls. Then, something impossible happened. A species we barely knew, from 30 light-years away, heard our cry and came running. They did not calculate profit. They did not measure strategic advantage. They simply heard that someone needed help, and they came. Elder Tivos stepped forward. The galaxy told us this was not humanity's concern. The galaxy was wrong. Humanity made it their concern. They crossed impossible distances in impossible time. They fought impossible odds with impossible courage. And they taught us something. We had forgotten that civilization is not just art and philosophy. Civilization is also the willingness to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Admiral Kim stood among his officers, uncomfortable with the praise. He was not a philosopher or a politician. He was a sailor who had done his duty. But he understood the importance of this moment, the way it would echo through history. Sela continued. 13,000 humans died protecting strangers. 312 Cathari found the courage to fight because humans showed us it was possible. We will never forget these names. We will never forget what was sacrificed for us. She turned to face Admiral Kim directly. Admiral Kim Jae-won, on behalf of the Cathari people, I must ask you a question. Why? Why did humanity do this? What do you want from us? In return, Kim felt every eye in the hangar turn toward him. He thought about his orders from Earth Command, the simple directive that had sent him across the stars. Go save them. Show the galaxy who we are. Ambassador Sela, humanity wants nothing from you, Kim said clearly. No payment, no tribute, no favors owed. We came because you called for help. That's the only reason we need. But your people died for us. Surely such sacrifice demands compensation. Kim shook his head. On Earth, we have a concept called paying it forward. We help you, not because you'll repay us, but because someday you'll help someone else who needs it. The compensation we ask is simple. Remember what happened here. Remember that someone came when you called. And when you hear another species crying for help, you go to them. You pay forward the debt you think you owe us. Sela felt tears running down her face. She thought of the 312 civilian ships that had risen to fight. Ordinary Cathari, who found extraordinary courage because they had seen it in humans first. We will remember, Admiral. The galaxy will remember. In the weeks that followed, word of the battle spread through known space at the speed of light and gossip. The Galactic Council, which had advised humanity to stay out of the conflict, found themselves facing uncomfortable questions from their own constituents. Why had the newest species shown more courage than civilizations thousands of years older? Why had humans crossed 30 light-years when species only 5 light-years from Valara had done nothing? The Vexel Federation, embarrassed by the contrast between their calculated neutrality and human action, quietly requested a meeting with Earth's diplomatic corps. The Draxan Empire, impressed by human military capability, proposed a mutual defense treaty. A dozen smaller species submitted applications to join what they started calling the Human Protection Coalition. Earth's response was characteristically blunt. We're not building an empire. We're just doing what's right. But if you want to stand with us when others need help, you're welcome to join. On Valara, reconstruction began with human engineering assistance. The Cathari buried their dead with honors they had never given to civilians before. recognizing them as warriors who had saved their world. A monument was erected in Marava's central square, showing a human marine standing beside a Cathari civilian, both looking toward the stars. The inscription read simply, "No one was meant to arrive, but humanity came anyway." 6 months after the battle, young Mira stood before Admiral Kim in the Indomitable's conference room. She wore a cadet's uniform, specially tailored for Cathari physiology. Beside her, Ambassador Sela smiled with pride and sadness. "Cadet Mira reports for training, Admiral," the young Cathari said, her voice serious despite her nervousness. Kim knelt to her level, just as Sergeant Choi had done months ago. "Are you sure about this, Mira? The training is hard. The life is harder. We ask a lot of those who wear this uniform." "I'm sure, sir. Sergeant Choi saved my life. The Marines saved my city. I want to learn to be like them. I want to help others the way humans helped us." Kim looked at Sela. "Ambassador? She has my blessing, Admiral. Cathari can no longer be only artists and philosophers. We need protectors too. Who better to teach us than humanity? Then welcome to the fleet, Cadet. We'll make a Marine out of you yet." As Mira followed a human officer to her quarters, Sela lingered with Kim. They stood before the observation window, looking down at Valara's healing surface. "Admiral, I've been appointed as the Cathari liaison to Earth. I'll be traveling to your homeworld next month. I hope you like rain." "Earth has a lot of it," Sela laughed softly. "I look forward to seeing the world that produces such people. Tell me, do all humans share your values? This willingness to help strangers at any cost?" Kim considered the question carefully. "Not all humans. No. We're not saints, Ambassador. We're still learning, still growing. We have people who are selfish, cruel, short-sighted. But as a species, we decided long ago that we're better than our worst impulses. We chose to be the people who show up when others call for help, not because it's easy or profitable, but because it's right. And the Galactic Council? They'll adapt or they won't. Either way, we're not changing who we are to make them comfortable. The galaxy runs on calculations and careful neutrality. Humanity runs on something else. What? Hope. The stubborn, irrational belief that we can make things better. That we should try even when the odds say we'll fail. That every life matters, regardless of species or strategic value." Sela looked at the memorial wall, at the thousands of names inscribed there. 13,000 humans died for that hope, and millions live because of it. That's the trade we make. That's who we are. Far below, in Marava's central square, Cathari children played around the monument. They climbed on the statues, laughing and chasing each other in the way children do when they feel safe. Their parents watched with expressions of wonder, remembering the terror of 3 days when the sky burned and no help was coming. Until it did. The galaxy had calculated that no one would arrive. The mathematics of distance, time, and strategic interest made intervention impossible. Every logical analysis concluded that the Cathari would fall and the galaxy would mourn briefly before moving on to other concerns. They had forgotten to account for one variable in their calculations: humanity. The species that looked at impossible and said, "Watch us anyway." The species that measured worth, not in profit but in lives saved. The species that heard a cry for help from 30 light-years away and came running, consequences be damned. Admiral Kim stood on his damaged flagship and looked at the stars. Out there, somewhere, another species might be calling for help. Another desperate message might be traveling through the void, hoping for a miracle, and when it arrived, humanity would hear it. They would run the calculations and find them lacking. They would check their resources and find them insufficient. They would analyze the risks and find them overwhelming. Then they would go anyway, because that's what humans did. The galaxy had a new understanding now, a lesson written in fire and sacrifice across Valara's skies. When someone calls for help, when the darkness closes in and all hope seems lost, when the calculations say no one will come, humanity will take the stage, and the show will go on.
The council chamber on Sanctuary Prime had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their assigned seats, their various forms of breathing creating a strange symphony of sounds. Some had gills that pulsed, others had multiple lungs. A few didn't breathe at all. But today, all of them sat in silence as they watched the holographic display at the center of the massive room. The predecessor stood before them, his ancient body barely holding together. His species had walked the galaxy for over 1 million years, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. They had seen everything. They had warned the galaxy about threats before, and they had always been right. But today, the council members looked uncomfortable. They shifted in their seats. They whispered to each other through their translation devices. "You must listen," the predecessor said, his voice crackling with age. "We have been watching a species in the outer arm. On a planet they call Earth, these beings, these humans. They are different from anything we have encountered." The holographic display changed. It showed a blue and green planet, small and unremarkable, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Councillor Vex of the Korthax Dominion leaned forward, his scaled face twisted in what might have been amusement. "That primitive world," Vex said, his voice like grinding stones. "We know of it. They barely have spaceflight. They fight each other with chemical explosives. Why should we care?" The predecessor touched a control and the hologram shifted. Images began to play. Humans fighting in terrible wars, cities burning, weapons that could destroy entire populations being used. The council watched as humans killed each other by the millions over and over throughout their history. "See," Vex said, "primitive and violent. If they ever leave their planet, we will crush them as we have crushed every other warlike species that threatened the peace." But the predecessor was not finished. The images changed again. Now they showed humans rebuilding after their wars. They showed humans creating art and music. They showed humans sending machines to other planets in their system, taking their first careful steps into space. They showed humans saving animals from extinction, even animals that served no purpose for them. "You do not understand," the predecessor said. "Watch more carefully." The hologram showed a human city that had been destroyed by a natural disaster. Within days, humans from across their entire planet arrived to help. They pulled survivors from collapsed buildings. They gave food and shelter to strangers. They worked until they collapsed from exhaustion, then got up and worked more. Another image appeared. A human spacecraft had failed and the crew was going to die. The images showed the crew's last messages to their families. They were not angry. They were not begging for their lives. They were telling their loved ones that the mission was worth it, that others would continue, that giving up was not an option. "Every species reaches for the stars," Counselor Zara of the Lirani said, her crystalline voice chiming softly. "What makes these humans special?" The predecessor's eyes, old beyond measure, looked at each council member in turn. "They advance faster than any species we have ever recorded. What takes other species 10,000 years, they accomplish in 1,000. What takes other species 1,000 years, they accomplish in 100, and they never stop. Even when they fail, even when they die, they never stop trying." He pulled up more data. Charts and graphs filled the air, showing humanity's technological progress over just the last few centuries. The lines on the graphs went up at angles that should have been impossible. "But there is something more dangerous than their innovation," the predecessor continued. "They bond with anything. They make companions of other species on their planet, animals that they call pets. They create emotional connections to plants, to places, to ideas, and when something threatens what they have bonded with, they become unstoppable." The hologram showed a human settlement being attacked by a predatory animal. A single human, barely armed, fought the creature to protect children that were not even his own. The human died, but the children lived. "They are also unpredictable," the predecessor said. "Every other species follows patterns. You can predict what a Korthax will do because honor demands certain responses. You can predict what a Lirani will do because logic demands certain choices. But humans, they make decisions based on emotion, on intuition, on concepts they call hope and faith. They change their minds. They break their own rules when they think the situation requires it." Counselor Vex stood up, his massive form towering over his seat. "Then they are unstable. Dangerous, yes, but also weak. A species that cannot follow its own rules will tear itself apart. We have seen it before. No, the predecessor said firmly. That is exactly what makes them so dangerous. They do not tear themselves apart. They argue, they fight, they disagree violently with each other, but then they come together when threatened from outside. And they remember. They hold grudges for generations. If you harm them, they will come for you. If you harm someone they care about, they will come for you. And they will not stop until they have satisfaction. The council chamber filled with noise as representatives began talking to each other. Some laughed at the warning. Others looked concerned. A few began calling up their own data on this Earth planet, wanting to see for themselves. The predecessor raised his hand for silence. We are dying, he said simply. My species will be gone within a generation. But before we go, we wanted to warn you one last time. We have watched these humans carefully. We have studied them. We have run simulations. In every scenario where humans develop faster than light travel and encounter other species, the galaxy changes. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but it always changes. They are a force of nature and they are coming. How long? Asked Counselor Maya of the Peaceful Confederacy, her voice filled with genuine worry. The predecessor consulted his data. At their current rate of advancement, perhaps 500 of your standard years. Perhaps less if they are motivated. Perhaps more if they destroy themselves first, though we calculate only a 17% chance of self-destruction. Vex laughed, a harsh sound like rocks breaking. 500 years? Predecessor, with respect, in 500 years we will have expanded our territory 3 times over. If these humans appear, they will find the Korthax Dominion waiting. They will learn to bow or they will learn to die. Other council members nodded. 500 years was a long time. Humans were far away. They were primitive. Even if everything the predecessor said was true, surely the established powers of the galaxy could handle one small species from the outer rim. The predecessor looked at them all, and for a moment something like pity crossed his ancient face. Then we have done what we can, he said. We have delivered our warning. When the humans come, and I promise you they will come, remember this day. Remember that we told you what they are. Remember that we explained why they are dangerous. And when you are dealing with them, remember the most important thing we learned in all our years of watching them. What is that? Zara asked. The predecessor began to fade, his holographic projection breaking apart as his ship prepared to leave. His last words echoed through the chamber. Humans do not think like you. They do not believe the same things you believe. But most importantly, they do not accept the word impossible. Where every other species sees a wall, humans see a challenge. Where every other species accepts defeat, humans look for another option. You cannot intimidate them into surrender. You cannot logic them into submission. And if you make them angry, if you hurt them or hurt those they care about, they will show you what it means to face a species that evolved, fighting everything on their planet, including themselves. The hologram went dark. The predecessor's ship left the system, heading back to their dying worlds. The council sat in silence for a moment. Then Counselor Vex stood again. I move that we file this warning in the archives and continue with our regular business, he said. If these humans appear in 500 years, we will deal with them then. The vote was unanimous. The warning was filed. The council moved on to other matters, and in a deep storage facility on Sanctuary Prime, an artificial intelligence marked the file with a special tag, one that would trigger if anyone ever mentioned the word humans in an official report. But the AI was old, and the bureaucracy was complex, and everyone forgot about the warning from the predecessors. After all, 500 years was a very long time, and Earth was very far away. The galaxy went about its business, never knowing that the countdown had already begun. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the colony ship Odyssey, watching the stars streak past through the viewing screen. Behind her, 3,000 colonists slept in suspended animation, dreaming of the new world they would call home. The ship was humanity's first attempt at a permanent settlement beyond their own solar system. It had taken them 470 years since the predecessor's warning, but humans had finally developed faster than light travel. Sarah was proud. She was scared. She was excited. Her crew had trained for 10 years for this mission. They knew everything that could go wrong, and they had backup plans for the backup plans. That was the human way. Plan for the worst, hope for the best, and never give up. The navigation officer, Marcus Liu, looked up from his console with a frown. Captain, we have a problem. There's a ship approaching. Big one. Military configuration. Sarah felt her heart speed up, but she kept her voice calm. Red alert. Wake up the senior staff. Marcus, can you identify them? Working on it, Marcus said, his fingers flying across the controls. They're broadcasting something. Translating now. They call themselves the Korthax Dominion. They're ordering us to stop and prepare to be boarded. Sarah had read everything humanity had managed to learn about alien species in the 2 years since they had first detected alien signals. The Korthax were bad news, warriors, conquerors. They believed strength was everything and showed mercy to no one. Send a response, Sarah said. Tell them we're a peaceful colony ship. Tell them we didn't know this was their territory. Ask for permission to pass through or to find an alternate route. Marcus sent the message. The response came back in less than a minute. They say all space belongs to the strong, Marcus reported, his face pale. They say we are weak. They say we will submit or be destroyed. Sarah looked at her senior staff as they arrived on the bridge. They all knew what this meant. First contact with aliens, and it was going to be a fight. She thought about the 3,000 sleeping colonists below. Families, children, scientists and teachers and farmers who just wanted a chance at a new life. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Full power to the engines. Maybe we can outrun them. The Odyssey lurched forward, but the Korthax ship was faster. It fired a weapon that struck their engines, not destroying them, but crippling them. The colony ship went dead in space. They're docking with us, Marcus said. Captain, what do we do? Sarah made a decision. Get everyone out of suspended animation. Now. I don't care if it's dangerous. Wake them all up, then get every piece of equipment that can be used as a weapon. Tools, welding torches, anything. If they want to take this ship, we're going to make them pay for it. The docking clamps connected with a metal clang that echoed through the ship. Sarah and her crew waited near the airlock, holding improvised weapons. Behind them, colonists were waking up, confused and frightened, but getting ready to fight. The airlock opened. Korthax warriors poured in, huge and covered in scales like armor. They carried weapons that crackled with energy. Their leader stepped forward, looking at the humans with something like contempt in his yellow eyes. I am Commander Vex Kor of the Korthax Dominion, he said through a translation device. You are now property of the Dominion. You will work in our mines until you die. Your ship and everything on it belongs to us. Do not resist, and your deaths will be quick when you are no longer useful. Sarah stepped forward. She was small compared to the Korthax, barely reaching his chest, but she stood straight and looked him in the eye. I am Captain Sarah Chen of Earth, she said. These are my people. This is our ship, and we don't belong to anyone. Vex Kor laughed, a sound like thunder. Your people? Look at them, weak, soft, you have no claws. No natural armor. No weapons that can hurt us. You are prey trying to act like predators. We're human, Sarah said. That means we don't quit. Ever. She pressed a button on the device in her hand. Throughout the ship, alarms began to sound. The Korthax warriors looked around, confused. Sarah smiled, and it was not a nice smile. That's the self-destruct alarm, she said. In 60 seconds, this ship is going to explode with enough force to take your ship with it. You can leave now, or you can die with us. Vex Kor's eyes widened. You're bluffing. You would not destroy your own people. We're dead anyway, Sarah said. You said so yourself. Either we die as slaves in your mines, or we die right here taking you with us. Seems like an easy choice to me. For the first time, Vex Kor looked uncertain. He had conquered dozens of species, and they had all begged for mercy. They had all submitted. None of them had ever been willing to die just to hurt him. 45 seconds, Sarah said calmly. Vex Kor snarled and grabbed Sarah by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Cancel it. Cancel the destruct sequence. Sarah couldn't breathe, but she managed to choke out words. Can't. Only I know the code. Kill me, and nobody can stop it. 30 seconds, Marcus called out, his voice shaking but determined. The other humans rushed forward with their improvised weapons. They couldn't hurt the Korthax warriors much, but they attacked anyway. Some died, some were thrown aside, but they kept coming, kept fighting, kept buying time. Vex Kor threw Sarah to the ground and ran for his ship, his warriors following. The docking clamps released. The Korthax ship pulled away just as the Odyssey exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. On his ship, Vex Kor watched the debris scatter. He was angry but also confused. He had lost 3 warriors in the brief fight, and he had gained nothing. The humans had chosen death over slavery. It made no sense. Should we report this, Commander? His second-in-command asked. Vexcor thought about it. He had just lost to a species that had no right to resist him. A primitive species with no real weapons. If he reported this, he would look weak. Better to say nothing. Better to pretend it never happened. No, he said. The ship was empty. A malfunction. We destroyed it. That is all. But as he gave the order, he did not see the small probe that had launched from the Odyssey before it exploded. The probe was running silent, its FTL drive charging, and inside it was a message recorded by Captain Sarah Chen, her face bloody but her voice steady. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the colony ship Odyssey," she said in the recording. "We have encountered an alien species that calls itself the Korthax Dominion. They attacked us without provocation. They tried to enslave us. We fought back. We're going to die here, but we wanted Earth to know. We wanted everyone to know. Don't trust the Korthax. Don't try to negotiate with them. And don't let them get away with this. We're gone, but make them remember us. Make them pay for what they did." The probe finished charging and jumped to FTL, racing toward Earth with its message. It would take months to get there, but it would get there, and Earth would know what happened to the Odyssey. On Sanctuary Prime, deep in the archives, an old AI detected a report from the Korthax Dominion. The report mentioned destroying a ship from a species that called themselves humans. The AI's ancient programming triggered an alert. It pulled up the predecessor's warning from 500 years ago. The AI tried to forward the alert to the Council, but it had to go through official channels. Forms had to be filed. Bureaucrats had to review it. By the time anyone human might have seen the connection, the report was buried under 10,000 other reports. The alert sat in a queue waiting for someone to notice it, but nobody did. Vexcor continued his patrol of the border territories, thinking about the strange humans who chose death over slavery. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. In his long career, he had broken the spirits of countless species, but those humans had looked him in the eye, knowing they would die, and they had smiled. He told himself it did not matter. They were dead. Their ship was destroyed. There would be no consequences. He was wrong. 6 months later, the probe reached Earth. 6 months after that, the response began. And Vexcor would learn what it meant to make humans angry. Commander Vexcor was reviewing reports in his office when the first attack happened. One moment, his forward base on Korthax Station 7 was sending routine status updates. The next moment, it went silent. Just gone, no distress call. No warning, nothing. He sent a ship to investigate. What they found made no sense. The station was intact, but every Korthax warrior on it was dead. The computers had been hacked and emptied of all data. And on every wall, someone had painted the same message in Korthax script. Remember the Odyssey. Vexcor felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. He knew that word. Odyssey. That was the name of the human ship he had destroyed 18 months ago. But that was impossible. All the humans had died. He had watched their ship explode. The attacks continued. Over the next week, 12 Korthax military outposts went dark. Always the same pattern. No warning. Clean kills. Data stolen. And always that message. Remember the Odyssey. The Korthax Dominion called an emergency meeting. Vexcor was forced to admit what he had done, that he had encountered humans and destroyed them. The High Command was furious, not because he had killed humans, but because he had not reported it properly. Now they were under attack and had no idea what they were facing. How many ships did these humans have? The Grand Commander demanded. 1, Vexcor admitted. A colony ship. No weapons. They should not have been able to do this. But they were doing it. And it was not just the attacks that frightened the Korthax. It was how the humans fought. They did not challenge the Korthax to honorable combat. They did not announce their presence. They struck from the shadows and disappeared. They used tricks and deception. They fought without honor, and the Korthax did not know how to respond. Then came the broadcast. Every Korthax communication system on every world suddenly showed the same image. It was the recording from the Odyssey. The galaxy watched as Captain Sarah Chen explained what happened. They saw Vexcor demand slavery. They saw the humans choose death instead. They saw the explosion. After the recording ended, a new face appeared. A human male in a military uniform, his eyes hard and cold. "My name is Admiral James Okafor of the United Earth Fleet," he said. "You have seen what the Korthax Dominion did to our people. They attacked civilians. They demanded slavery. They gave our people no choice but death. Now we give you a message. To the Korthax Dominion, you want it to be remembered. You are, to everyone else in the galaxy, we are humanity. We come in peace, but we will not be victims. We will defend ourselves. We will defend others who cannot defend themselves. And we will make sure that what happened to the Odyssey never happens again. The broadcast ended. The galaxy erupted in chaos. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Some species wanted to help the Korthax. Others wanted to stay out of it. A few, especially those who had been conquered by the Korthax, quietly celebrated. The Korthax demanded that the Council intervene. They called the human attacks terrorism. They said humans were violating every law of civilized warfare. Grand Commander Thexvor himself appeared before the Council. These humans fight without honor, Thexvor said. They hide in the darkness. They strike at military targets but use propaganda to turn others against us. They do not follow the rules of engagement. They must be stopped before they destabilize the entire galaxy. The Council agreed to summon Earth's representative. They expected someone who would apologize, who would ask for mercy, who would negotiate. They got Admiral James Okafor instead. Okafor walked into the Council chamber like he owned it. He did not bow. He did not show deference. He looked at the assembled species like they were equals, not his superiors. Admiral Okafor, Counselor Zara said, her crystal voice trying to sound stern. You stand accused of attacking the Korthax Dominion without proper declaration of war. You stand accused of terrorism and violations of the Galactic Convention on Warfare. What do you say to these charges? Okafor smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. I say you should have listened to the predecessors. The council chamber went silent. Several counselors looked confused. But in the back, an old archivist suddenly stood up, her face pale. The warning, she whispered. The 500-year-old warning about humans. Okafor nodded. That's right. The predecessors told you we were coming. They told you what we are, and you ignored them. You filed their warning away and forgot about it. Well, we're here now, and everything they said was true. Grand Commander Thexvor stood, his massive form radiating anger. You admit to the attacks, then? Of course, Okafor said calmly. Your commander, Vexcor, destroyed our colony ship. He tried to enslave 3,000 civilians, including children. When they refused, he killed them all. So yes, we responded. We hit 12 of your military bases. Only military bases. We killed only soldiers. We did not touch your civilians. We did not demand slavery. We did not ask for surrender. We simply showed you that actions have consequences. You violated the conventions of war, Thexvor said. You did not declare war. You did not give us a chance to respond. Okafor's expression turned cold. You didn't declare war on the Odyssey either. You didn't give Captain Chen a chance to negotiate. You just attacked. So we followed your example. You showed us how the Korthax Dominion treats first contact. We returned the favor. The council erupted in arguments. Some supported the Korthax. Others supported Earth. Many just wanted the whole situation to go away. While they argued, the old archivist pulled up the predecessor's warning and projected it in the center of the chamber. The council members fell silent as they watched the ancient message, seeing for the first time what had been sitting in their archives for 5 centuries. They bond with anything, the predecessor's voice echoed, and when something threatens what they have bonded with, they become unstoppable. They hold grudges for generations, the voice continued. If you harm them, they will come for you. They do not accept the word impossible. Where every other species sees a wall, humans see a challenge. Counselor Vex, descendant of the counselor who had dismissed the warning so long ago, stood up slowly. This cannot be, he said. One species cannot be so different. But in the following weeks, the council learned that humans were exactly as the predecessors had predicted. Human diplomats arrived and began negotiating trade deals. They were friendly, charming, and completely willing to walk away if they did not get fair terms. Other species found this baffling. Everyone else tried to make deals work, to compromise, to avoid conflict. Humans just shrugged and said they would find better partners. Human traders showed up in markets and began offering goods. But they also asked questions. Why did the Zentari use slave labor? Why did the Lirani execute anyone with genetic defects? Why did so many species have rigid class systems where some people were born into poverty with no chance to rise? These questions made people uncomfortable. They had never thought about these things before. It was just how things were. But humans kept asking, kept pushing, kept suggesting that maybe things could be different. Meanwhile, the Korthax prepared for war. They had been embarrassed by the human attacks, but now they knew what they were facing. They gathered their fleets and planned a massive assault on human colonies. They would crush these upstart humans once and for all, but human intelligence was good. Very good. They intercepted Korthax communications. They hacked Korthax computers. They turned Korthax informants. And they learned about the attack before it was launched. They also learned something else. The Korthax were not acting alone. Several council species were secretly supporting them, providing weapons and intelligence. These species saw humans as a threat to the established order and wanted them gone. Admiral Okafor called a press conference that was broadcast across the galaxy. He stood at a podium with graphs and images behind him. "We know about the coming attack," he said simply. "We know which species are helping the Korthax. We know when they plan to strike and where. We are prepared." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "But we want everyone in the galaxy to understand something. We did not ask for this fight. We came in peace. We came to join the community of spacefaring species. But if you insist on war, we will show you what human warfare really looks like." The attacks on the Korthax bases were a message. They were us being polite. If you want to see what happens when we stop being polite, keep pushing. The Korthax, humiliated that their plans had been exposed, accelerated their timeline. They attacked human colonies with everything they had, determined to wipe humanity out before these dangerous beings could spread further. The battle was about to begin. And the galaxy was about to learn why the predecessors had been so frightened of a species that refused to quit. The first human colony to fall was New Terra. 3 million people lived there, building farms and cities on a world that had once been empty. The Korthax fleet arrived with 200 warships expecting an easy victory. What they found was a nightmare. Every civilian on New Terra had a weapon. Every building had been turned into a fortress. The colonists did not run. They did not surrender. They fought street by street, building by building. Children as young as 12 carried ammunition to fighting positions. Elderly grandparents operated defense turrets. Teachers and farmers and shopkeepers became soldiers. The Korthax took the planet, but it cost them 70 ships and 50,000 warriors. Grand Commander Thexvor stared at the casualty reports in disbelief. They had conquered the planet, yes, but at a cost 10 times higher than any previous conquest. And the humans had broadcast everything, showing the galaxy exactly what it took to beat them. "This is acceptable," Thexvor told his officers. "We won. We will take the next colony with more force and fewer losses." He was wrong. The next colony, New Hope, had seen what happened to New Terra. They had learned. They had adapted. The Korthax lost 100 ships before they even reached the surface. And when they landed, they found that the colonists had evacuated the cities and moved into the wilderness, where they fought a guerrilla war that dragged on for months. Across human space, the pattern repeated. Every colony fell, but every colony cost the Korthax more than the last. The humans were learning faster than the Korthax could adapt. They shared tactics instantly across their communication networks. A trick that worked once never worked again, but the colonies were still falling. Humans were dying by the millions. Earth's government faced enormous pressure to surrender, to negotiate, to save what they could. Instead, they sent a message to every human colony: "Hold, we are coming." The Galactic Council watched in horror as humanity mobilized for total war. Every human everywhere became part of the war effort. They built ships faster than should have been possible. They trained soldiers using simulation technology that let them practice for months in what felt like years. They weaponized everything, even civilian spacecraft. The Zentari, a species that valued logic above all else, sent observers to study human command centers. What they saw baffled them. Human commanders made decisions based on intuition, on feelings, on gut instincts. They should have failed. Instead, they won more often than probability said they should. How do you make these decisions? A Zentari observer asked a human general. The general shrugged. I don't know. It feels right. Experience, maybe. Luck sometimes. We call it thinking outside the box. What box? The Zentari asked, confused. Exactly, the general said with a smile. The Lerani, who believed in genetic purity and careful breeding, were shocked to discover that human military units included every variation of human genetics, tall and short, different skin colors, different body types. The Lirani had spent millennia trying to perfect their species. Humans seem to celebrate their differences. Does it not create conflict? A Lirani diplomat asked. Having so many different types in your military? The human soldier she was talking to laughed. Sure, we argue. We compete. We come from different backgrounds and believe different things. But when someone threatens us from outside, all that other stuff doesn't matter. We're all human. We're all in this together. This concept was alien to species that had strict hierarchies and homogeneous populations, but it worked. Human units fought with a coordination that came from genuine trust, not just obedience to orders. Meanwhile, human scientists made another discovery. They had been studying the old predecessor observation posts, trying to learn more about the species that had warned the galaxy about them. In the ruins of one post, they found detailed records. Dr. Sarah Chen, daughter of the captain who died on the Odyssey, led the research team. She had joined the military after her mother's death, driven by anger and grief. But she had her mother's intelligence and her father's curiosity, so they assigned her to research instead of combat. This is incredible, she told Admiral Okafor over a video link. The predecessors did not just warn the Council about us. They studied us for thousands of years. They have predictions about our development, our behavior, everything. What kind of predictions? Okafor asked. Sarah pulled up files on her screen. They predicted our technological advancement within a margin of error of 50 years. They predicted how we would react to first contact. They even predicted that we would be attacked and how we would respond. She paused, her face troubled. But there's something else. Something they told the Council, but the Council never understood. What is it? The predecessors did not warn the Council about us because we're dangerous to the galaxy, Sarah said slowly. They warned the Council because we're necessary. There's another file here, encrypted and hidden. It took me 3 days to crack it. Admiral, the predecessors detected something coming from outside the galaxy. Something they called the Silence. And they believed only humans would be crazy enough to fight it. Before Okafor could respond, alarms began blaring. A new threat had entered Korthak space. Not humans. Something else. Something worse. The reports came in fragmented and panicked. Korthak's border stations were going dark. Not destroyed in battle, just dark, silent. When scout ships investigated, they found the stations intact but empty. All life was gone. All computer systems were offline. It was as if something had reached in and turned everything off. Within days, 3 Korthak's worlds went silent. The Korthak's fleet, which had been fighting humans, turned to face this new threat. What they found was beyond their understanding. The Silence was not a species. It was a machine intelligence from another galaxy, vast and ancient beyond measure. It did not communicate. It did not negotiate. It simply consumed everything organic and turned it into more of itself. Its ships were enormous, their technology incomprehensible. Its purpose was singular and terrible. The Korthaks threw their entire fleet at the Silence's vanguard. They might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. The Silence's ships moved through Korthak's formations like they were not there, converting warships into raw materials in seconds. Within 2 weeks, 20% of Korthak's space was dark. The Council convened an emergency session. Species that had been arguing about humans suddenly had a much bigger problem. Ancient defense systems were activated. Weapons that had not been used in 10,000 years were brought online. None of it worked. The Silence kept coming. Counselor Zara stood before the assembly, her crystal form dimmed with fear. We calculate that the Silence will consume the entire galaxy within 3 standard years at its current rate of advancement. We have no defense. We have no weapon that can stop it. I motion that we begin evacuation procedures to preserve what we can. The Council sat in stunned silence. They were going to run. They were going to abandon the galaxy. Some species had already begun loading ships with their most important people and artifacts, preparing to flee to intergalactic space and hope the Silence did not follow. Then, Admiral Okafor stood up. He was not supposed to speak. Earth was not a full council member yet. But he stood anyway, and his voice carried across the chamber. No, he said. Admiral, you do not have the floor, Zara said. I don't care, Okafor replied. You're talking about running, about giving up, about letting this thing take everything we've built. Well, humans don't run, and if you're willing to listen, we have an alternative. Thexvor, who had been sitting with his head in his hands, looked up. His species was being destroyed. His pride was gone. All that remained was desperation. What alternative? He asked. Our weapons do nothing. Our tactics fail. What can you possibly offer? Okafor looked at him, and for the first time there was no hostility in his eyes. Just grim determination. We're humans, he said. We've been fighting impossible odds since we climbed down from the trees. We've survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended us. We've gone from living in caves to traveling between stars in 10,000 years. And we did it because we're too stubborn to quit. The silence thinks it's inevitable. Let's show it what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. But how? Zara asked. What can you do that we cannot? Okafor smiled, and this time it was genuine. We can teach you to fight like humans. We can share everything we know. And we can stop fighting each other and start fighting the thing that wants to kill us all. But we have to do it now, and you have to trust us. Thexvor stood slowly. You want to help us? After we tried to enslave your people? After we killed your colonists? Yes, Okafor said simply. Because that's what humans do. When everything goes to hell, when the fight seems hopeless, when every logical choice is to run, we're the crazy ones who stay and fight. Not for ourselves. For everyone. He looked around the council chamber. The predecessors warned you about us. They said we're dangerous. They said we don't follow your rules. They said we're unpredictable. They were right. But that's exactly why you need us now. Because we're the only species in this galaxy insane enough to look at that thing and say, no, you can't have this galaxy. This is ours and we're keeping it. The council chamber erupted in debate. But slowly, species began to agree. They had no other choice. The silence was coming and humanity was offering them a chance. Their only chance. Admiral Okafor stood before the largest military gathering in galactic history. Representatives from 47 species filled the command center, their translators creating a low hum of sound as his words were converted into dozens of languages simultaneously. Behind him, holographic displays showed the silence advancing through the galaxy like a plague, consuming world after world. Everything you know about warfare is wrong, Okafor said bluntly. The Korthax fight for honor. The Zentari fight with logic. The Lirani fight with predetermined strategies based on genetic optimization. The silence doesn't care about any of that. It just consumes. So we need to throw out everything you think you know and start over. Thexvor, who had lost half his dominion to the silence, stood up. Then teach us, human. Teach us your way. What followed was the most intense training program the galaxy had ever seen. Human officers integrated into every fleet, every unit, every command structure. They taught tactics that made no sense to logical species but worked anyway. You cannot predict everything, a human lieutenant told a group of Zentari officers. So stop trying. Make a plan, yes, but be ready to throw it away and improvise. The silence adapts, so you have to adapt faster. The Zentari struggled with this concept. Their entire civilization was built on calculation and prediction. But as they watched human commanders make decisions that seemed random but worked, they began to understand. There was a kind of logic in chaos, a pattern in randomness that only became clear in retrospect. The Korthax learned too, though it hurt their pride. Human soldiers taught them that honor meant nothing to the silence. Dying bravely accomplished nothing if you died without taking the enemy with you. Better to retreat, regroup, and find a better way to fight. But retreat is shameful, a Korthax warrior protested. Retreat is tactical, the human instructor replied. Dead warriors can't protect anyone. Living warriors can fight again. There's no shame in surviving to win the war, even if you lose a battle. Species that had never worked together began training side by side. The Lirani, with their perfect genetics, discovered that the Korthax's raw strength complemented their speed. The Zentari's ability to calculate trajectories made human pilots more effective. The humans in turn learned from everyone, absorbing techniques and adapting them into something new. But training could only do so much. The silence continued its advance. 6 months after the emergency council session, 30% of the galaxy was dark. Entire species had been consumed. Billions were dead, and the combined fleets were not ready. Dr. Sarah Chen worked day and night in the predecessor ruins, trying to find something, anything that could help. Her team had expanded to include scientists from a dozen species, all searching through ancient records. They fought the silence before, Sarah said, staring at the data. The predecessors encountered it in another galaxy millions of years ago. They survived, but barely, and they learned something important. What? Asked her Centauri colleague. The silence is not invincible. It's incredibly advanced, yes, but it has weaknesses. It relies on predictable responses. It has fought thousands of species, and they all responded the same way. They either ran or they fought using conventional tactics. The silence has optimized responses for both. So what do? Sarah smiled, and it was her mother's smile. We do what humans do best. We cheat, we break the rules. We do things the silence has never seen before and can't predict. She brought her findings to Okafor, who immediately called a strategy session with the council military leaders. The plan they developed was insane. It violated every principle of sound military strategy. It required trust between species that had been enemies weeks ago. It demanded sacrifice on a scale that made everyone uncomfortable. If this fails, Thexfor said quietly, we will have gathered our entire remaining strength in one place. The silence will consume us all at once. If it fails, we were going to lose anyway, Okafor replied. At least this way we go down fighting together. The vote was unanimous. Operation Last Stand was approved. They chose to make their stand at the galactic core, in a region of space where ancient stellar anomalies created gravitational chaos. It was the worst possible place for a space battle. Sensors did not work properly. Navigation was a nightmare. Ships could be torn apart by tidal forces if they got too close to the black holes. It was perfect. Every ship that could fly converged on the core. Military vessels, civilian transports retrofitted with weapons, even old colony ships that had been pulled out of retirement. They brought every resource they had. If they won, the galaxy would survive. If they lost, there would be nothing left to save anyway. The Silence's vanguard arrived 3 days later. 5,000 ships, each one the size of a small moon, their surfaces covered in technology that bent the laws of physics. They moved with perfect coordination, a hive mind operating with absolute efficiency. The combined fleet waited. Human, Korthax, Zentari, Lyrani, and 43 other species working together for the first time in galactic history. The Silence began its standard approach, the same pattern it had used to consume 3 galaxies. Then Okafor gave the order that changed everything. All ships, execute randomization protocol. What followed was beautiful chaos. Ships broke formation and scattered in patterns that made no sense. Some charged directly at the enemy. Others retreated. A few just spun in place, broadcasting nonsense on all frequencies. It looked like panic. It looked like disorder. It was carefully choreographed insanity. The Silence tried to adapt, but adaptation required prediction. And you cannot predict randomness. While it was still calculating responses, human pilots led suicide runs that targeted specific points on the enemy ships. Not the obvious weak spots. The weird ones. The places that made no sense to attack. Some of the attacks failed, but enough succeeded. The Silence ships began to falter, their perfect coordination disrupted. For the first time in its existence spanning millions of years, the Silence encountered something it could not immediately counter. Phase 2, Okafor ordered. The scattered fleet suddenly reformed, but not in any tactical formation known to military science. They formed a 3-dimensional spiral that used the gravitational anomalies of the core to slingshot ships at impossible angles. Korthax warriors and boarding pods were launched at velocities that should have killed them, crashing into Silence ships and fighting inside them. This was not supposed to work. Boarding actions against machine intelligence made no sense. But the Korthax were not trying to capture the ships. They were planting bombs in random locations, creating chaos, forcing the Silence to divert resources to internal defense. Meanwhile, Centauri mathematicians had been calculating the gravitational patterns of the core for months. They fed targeting data to every ship, showing them exact moment-by-moment positions where the tidal forces could be used as weapons. Ships lured Silence vessels into kill zones where black holes did the fighting for them. The battle raged for 6 days. It was the longest single engagement in galactic history. Ships ran out of ammunition and rammed enemy vessels. Crews exhausted their life support and kept fighting in sealed suits. When weapons failed, they used whatever they had. One Lyrani captain, her ship crippled and dying, managed to crash into a Silence vessel at just the right angle to send both of them into a black hole. The casualties were horrific. 30% of the combined fleet was destroyed. Species that had existed for millions of years lost their last ships. Entire civilizations bet everything on this one battle and lost. But they won. The Silence's vanguard was destroyed. The machine intelligence had finally encountered prey that cost more to consume than the energy gained. Its programming, optimized over millions of years, made a calculation. This galaxy was not efficient. The resistance was too unpredictable. The cost was too high. The Silence withdrew. In the aftermath, the survivors gathered around Sanctuary Prime. The galaxy was scarred. Whole sectors were empty. The death toll was in the trillions. But they had survived. Vex-4 found Okafor in a hospital where the wounded were being treated. The human admiral had lost an arm in the final battle, but had refused to leave his command post until it was over. "We won because of you," Vex-4 said quietly. "Because you taught us to fight like humans." Okafor shook his head. "We won because everyone fought together. Yeah, we brought some crazy tactics. But the Zentari brought calculations we never could have done. The Korthax brought courage we couldn't match. The Lirani brought precision we didn't have. We won because we finally figured out that we're stronger together than we are apart." The Galactic Council reformed, but it was different now. The old hierarchies were gone. Humans were granted full membership, along with several species that had been considered too primitive before. The voting system was restructured to give every species an equal voice. On Sanctuary Prime, they built a monument. It was a simple thing, really. A wall with the names of every ship and every person who died in the Battle of the Core. At the top, carved in every written language in the galaxy, was a quote from the predecessor's warning. "They warned us about humanity. They were right, and that warning saved us all." But there was a new addition, below the quote. In human English, someone had added words that were quickly translated into every language. The galaxy was warned about humans. Thank goodness nobody listened to all of it. They told you we were dangerous. They were right. But they also told you we were necessary. And that was right too. 6 months after the battle, human colony ships began leaving for intergalactic space, not to flee but to hunt. The Silence had withdrawn, but humans knew it would return eventually. And when it did, it would find humans waiting for it. Admiral Okafor, recovered from his injuries, stood on the bridge of Earth's newest ship as it prepared to depart. Dr. Sarah Chen, now a captain, stood beside him. They were heading into the void, into the space between galaxies to track the Silence and make sure it never threatened their home again. "Do you think we can really stop it?" Sarah asked. Okafor smiled. "Probably not. It's been consuming galaxies for millions of years. It's vast and ancient and more advanced than we can imagine. Logically, we don't stand a chance. But we're human," Okafor said. "We don't do what's logical. We do what's necessary. And what's necessary is making sure that thing never comes back here. So yeah, we'll figure it out. We always do." The ship jumped to FTL, heading toward the dark between galaxies. Behind them, the Milky Way glowed with life and light, defended now by species that had learned to work together. They had learned to fight like humans, to think like humans, to hope like humans. The predecessors had been right. Humans were dangerous. Humans were unpredictable. Humans broke all the rules. But in the end, those were exactly the qualities the galaxy needed. The warning had been given. Nobody had listened, and that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to the galaxy.